Thank you all for being here. This topic is really important for me. I found out that the imposter syndrome had a name when I was a postdoc, and I thought I was all alone, and it turns out I'm not. So we were laughing about how this came about. So Bev Clark posted a Facebook post about imposter syndrome, and I responded. And Allison read it and said, ooh, there's somebody that knows what this is that's at Emory. We should do an event. And then she asked me to do this event, and I almost imposter syndromed myself out of doing this event. So I guess that sets the stage for our conversation, because I'm actually a little nervous about doing this. And those of you that know me know I don't easily get nervous. But we're very excited that you're here, Valerie, and you can tell us about your experiences with this and help those in the audience that don't know what this is. So what is the imposter syndrome, and how do we know if we have it?
Okay, so I will tell you two things about me. One is that it's hard for me to sit down.
Okay.
So at some point I may pop out of this seat. I'll take it with me. And then the other thing I'll tell you is that I'm so happy to see the breadth of folks who are in this audience, because I know I'm looking at students and faculty, and that's a beautiful thing. It's hard for me to describe it by a definition. It's easier for me to tell you what it feels like, what it felt like to me, because I think then people can just check themselves to see if this feels like you. So for me, it's that feeling that any day now, they, and we'll come back and talk about who they are later, are going to figure out that you're not supposed to be where you are. There it is. I see heads. I see, right? It's not about your head. I need you to go here, right? How does it feel to you? It's that feeling that you have to work harder than everybody else and do it perfectly, because heaven forbid that they find out that you made a mistake, because that's going to mean something about who you are, and that's going to be their first hint that you're out of place, you're overplaced. It's that feeling for me. I'm describing past, but I can feel it now as if it was present, because I can just remember what it felt like for me. It's that feeling when somebody gives you an intellectual compliment. I'll come back to the others later. Your brain immediately, it feels good for about 10 seconds maybe, but about on the 11th second, you're like, oh my God, they think I can actually do this. For me, I'll tell you, just so in this process, it is my goal for you to believe that we are the same. Because it's that feeling that some of you have sitting there thinking, she can't possibly know because she's the dean. Right? You're thinking, it's that feeling that you think you are uniquely disqualified. You're that kind of special. I love your laughter, because laughter is a sign of healing. We're on our way somewhere. It at least tells me that you feel it. And the first place that you could probably handle feeling it is in laughter, right? Because it's hard to, for me, it was that feeling as a full professor, walking down the hall to my office, at my alma mater. It couldn't have been any better, right? I'm 10 minutes from my mother. I love North Carolina. I'm back at the place where I received both of my degrees. From what I can tell, they love me. And I'm walking down the hall every day thinking, oh my God, when are they going to find out that I'm not supposed to be here? The data did not match that, but the data just made it more painful, because I thought that the data was in error. And so the more data I had, oh God, all those awards that she just read, teaching, blah, 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 that hurt worse every single time. Because I kept thinking, oh my gosh, they really think I can do this. So that's what it feels like. And I will tell you that this will hurt you when I say this, if you're one of us. If you're not brilliant, you don't get this. If you're not a high achiever, let me put it that way. Brilliant is subjective. If you're not a high achiever, you don't get this. Some of you are sitting there thinking, she doesn't know what version I have. But let me just tell you that as I say to my students, the average bear does not walk around thinking, I wonder when they're going to find out I'm not a genius. That's not happening. Only people who actually are high achievers, at whatever it is, have this. So I've done talks where it's been undergraduate students, my merit scholars at Duke, my full professor, white male colleagues in chemistry. It doesn't matter. I find there are a lot of women in this room. I just note that. Maybe you're more in touch with where you are, or maybe you're more willing to sit in here and be more in touch with where you are. I don't know what that means. But I've done this across the spectrum of high achievers. And I always come in the room. I stopped doing this now. I did not think that when I came in here today. But for years, I thought, this is going to be the time when I sit in that room and I say those things I just said to you, and people are going to look at me like I have two heads because they have no idea what I'm talking about. And that never has happened.
Does everyone in academia suffer from this?
No.
No?
No, I am not qualified. I'm genuinely not qualified to answer that question. But I've seen people who've sat with me and said, this is not who I am, right? Like they've got a good balance of self-esteem, not too high, not too low. Like they've gotten great feedback. Like they know who they are. They can own their positive qualities. They can own the things that need work, and they are just fine. They're not. I think they are. I trust what they tell me. Whenever I do this, and I don't know if that's because it's the people who come to the room, the majority of people sitting in the room will tell me they feel some of this, if not everything I just described, they can relate to. Yeah.
All right. So how can you tell the difference between actually having imposter syndrome and actually not being good at the job that you have?
That is so fabulous. So first of all, I have to start by telling you about my mother, okay? My father thought that I could do anything, and my mother was clear to let me know, no, that was not the case, okay? But gently and with all love. So she would say to me, honey, you're smart, but you can't sing, okay? And I know today I cannot sing, right? Right? I'm crystal clear about it. I cannot sing. The two of them were my first mentors, but I highly recommend to everybody in the world, you need some people. And particularly if you think that you carry any of these traits, I always say to people, working on my mind with my mind is not going to get me out of this. That just doesn't work. My best thinking got me here, right? So working on my mind with my mind is not possible. So I have some great mentors. I highly recommend it. If you guys know who Valerie Young is, not to be confused with me, I always have to make that separation. It's two Valeries. And she's actually the person whose work I read, and I was able to put a name on it years and years ago. She talks about breaking the silence. And so when you break that silence, you break it with people who are going to be honest with you so they can tell you, no, you're not good at this, or, no, that's right, you're not supposed to do that. Or they can say, oh, you're doing that thing that you do, and you're actually quite capable of doing this. Now, I will tell you that my mother, was one of my first mentors, is not on my list of people to mentor me through imposter syndrome. Okay, if anybody has a mother like mine, you'll know why. My mother thinks that I can scale buildings she thinks that much of me, right? She's the mother who says, well, when are you going to win the Nobel Prize, honey? And she's serious, right? When I came here, everywhere I go, she's like, what are you going to do? Are they giving you an award? I'm like, okay, no, right? No, that person actually, before working through imposter syndrome, that actually hurts. Mm-hmm. Because, like one more person who thinks I'm perfect in some way, right? She's being supportive. She doesn't know. That's painful to me. So I say, don't pick cheerleaders. Everybody needs cheerleaders, right? And my mother's my cheerleader. When I need somebody to cheer, I can pick up the phone, right? But when I need clarity, she's not my person. You need some good friends who are going to allow you to be human, who are going to honor your feelings. Because when somebody says to me, oh, you shouldn't feel like that, that doesn't help me. Because I do feel like this. Let me feel like this and help me with how I feel, as opposed to saying, well, of course you're going to get blah, 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 right? So my mentors are phenomenal. I've had them for decades now. They've watched me through this and helped me through this. And the beauty is that when they tell me I can't do something today, it doesn't hurt. Right? It's like, great. Now I can spend more time doing that thing that I'm really better at doing. So yeah, it is important not to think you're either great at everything or bad at everything. I always say the interesting thing about imposter syndrome is that my version was that I had low self-esteem and high pride at the same time, right? Because low self-esteem is all those things I just told you, right? High pride is this sense of I'm supposed to be the one who never makes a mistake. Who is that? Right? Like, who is that? The idea that I am supposed to be perfect, that's pride for me, okay? So I had high pride and low self-esteem at the same time. And I just need somebody who's going to give me a reality check and put me somewhere in the middle around human, right? So yeah, no, if you don't have that kind of mentor, not cheerleader, but real, true feedback giver to you, who will honor that you actually feel this way. It would have been hard for me to move forward.
So can you tell us a bit more about your personal journey and how you learned about imposter syndrome and how you've worked through that?
Sure. So I was miserable. Miserable. And it did not, the hard thing about this is that if I had something happening where the data equaled misery, it would have been easier. Because then people would say, we know why you're miserable. Look at the data, right? And then they would have been there in a different way, or it would have been more clear to me that I was in trouble in a different way. The data looked like what he just read to you, right? And so I love it when people do that, so I can come right behind them and say, that's what the data said. And by the way, some of you are sitting there thinking, my data doesn't look like that, so I'm really not one of them. I get it. He's reading to you the data that's good. Who puts on their resume that they got a C in physics? You understand what I'm trying to get you to get me off of whatever version of pedestal you have put me on, because it's not real. It's not real. I got a C in physics. I wasn't just kidding, right? And let me tell you what I did when I got a C. Thank you. I was happy. You know, some students will say, I'll retake it. No, I will not retake it. Thank you very much. I say that for two reasons. One, it's not a showstopper. It's fine. I'm fine. I'm just fine, right?
Yep.
I am fine, right? So it's really important to not do that perfectionistic thing, right? And to not let that data mess with you. So I had the data, and my data kept growing, and my insides were dying. I mean, just dying. And I knew something was wrong when I was an assistant. I knew it was wrong when I was a graduate student because I would over-prepare for everything. You know what? Yeah, there you are. I mean, I can give one heck of a talk. You know why? Because I have practiced that talk. You are not going to ask me a question that I have not prepared for, because I can't risk looking like I'm not supposed to be here. It looks pretty in the package, okay? I'm just saying the package of my talk is going to look good, or else I'm not giving it, right? I take no chances. Winging it? And so, my oral exams, I studied so hard that I was out for 3 weeks afterwards, physically ill. I had made myself sick. And my PhD advisor, who is one of my mentors, who knows my core, looked at me and said, Val, you don't have to keep doing this. But I didn't know how to stop doing it. So I kept doing it as an assistant professor, because if you think that there are no guardrails as a graduate student, all the guardrails come off when you're on a tenure track job, right? Because you're working for your life, right? And I did it the same way. And I would literally work till exhaustion for days. And then, 2:05 on Wednesday afternoon, I'm so tired that I can't actually hold a glass in a lab because I can't feel how tightly I'm holding it. And I'm afraid I'm gonna squeeze it too hard and break this glass in my hand, literally. And I would go home and sleep for hours and wake back up and do it again. And my friends who weren't academics would look at that and they would think, we don't understand that, but they could not help me with it. And then the awards kept going because, if you work hard enough, stuff happens, right? Because you're willing to do things that no normal human being would, right? So people clap. And let me just tell you what happened for me. I got addicted to clapping. When you get it, so here it is. It's like, but I'm not stopping. I'm still on the train. I am, now a tenured faculty member, kept going, moved back to UNC as a faculty member. This is my dream world. I had no idea I'd be able to go home. That's pretty sweet. The people who trained me, I get to go back and be in the same department with them. And it's literally home for me. I was born I'm a North Carolinian, and I'm killing myself trying to be a full professor. And I do that thing that I do. And I get to that place where I think I was just promoted because I did it all the way through there. And I thought, I'm a full professor. I'm walking down the hall to my dream job every day thinking, I think I'm going to cry because I'm in such pain, because they really think I can do this now. Okay, I'm 40 at that point, right? I think I was promoted when I was 41. That's insane that at 41 years old, I'm walking down, what is there that I don't have at that point, academically? Maybe a distinguished professorship, but okay, whatever. But you know what I mean? So that's where I was, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I had run out physically, emotionally, bankrupt. And that page, the data kept going, and my insides tanked. And I said, I got to do something. I got on my computer one day. It sounds like somebody knows something. And just by grace, I found Valerie Young. And I just typed in my feelings, and boom, there it was. And the pages that I found, I'm 52, okay? The pages that I found, I printed out, and it's called 10 Ways to Stop Feeling Like a Fraud by Valerie Young. Please don't give me credit. I don't need to lose my job over not documenting this. And I started doing it. But I couldn't do it by myself. The first thing on the list, it says break the silence. Well, I had a team who saw me, but now I needed some other people to help me. And I used my friends who were the kinds who weren't cheerleaders. And I used some of my academic colleagues who knew me well, who had watched me do this over decades. And we started doing it. And I was like, I have to. I can't breathe. And we did it, and we did it, and we did it. And in about a year and a half, I'll never forget it, because it was the end of the fall semester. And I thought, I was walking down the hall to my office, and I thought, my goodness, I don't think I feel that. I mean, the switch had gradually flipped after doing. If you look at our list of things, there are ways that I did that, and my brain got I don't know what happened. But since then, it's been almost 10 years now, that my brain does not think that. I don't think I'm better than you, which was part of my problem, right? Because I thought I was supposed to not fail ever, and I don't think I'm worse than you. What I've owned is who I am and what I do. And then I try to get in places where that works, right? So fit is what's important to me. So, you know, if you're a teacher and you're trying to do in a place where they're asking you to be a researcher, that's going to hurt you every day of the week, right? If you are a researcher and they're asking you to, that's going to hurt you every day of the week. But it doesn't matter what it is. So I have gotten comfortable, because for those of you, you guys know this, administrator is not a goal for a scholar. If you didn't know that, it's not, okay? But I was becoming one, and I could, you know, I became department chair. I would not have been able to say yes to being a department chair, which was kind of my first official version, without working this through. Because that is a different level of exposure and vulnerability. And my present job, I certainly couldn't do, because everybody thinks they know how to do my job better than I do, right? Everybody. There is a lot of feedback, whether you want it or not, right? And if you can't handle, if you can't, you know, take in the things that are true and leave the things that are not, and go to bed, and I tell my staff, I go to sleep every night. Sleep is a decision. That's what I tell them. I could go to sleep right now, by the way. I can, at any point, I could just decide it's time. But the peace that I have is working that out, right? Like I don't remember what the original question was, but yes.
Do you think that you can completely overcome it, or is this something that you still on occasion struggle with? Or?
Well, this is interesting, because I think if I stopped doing the things that I have found that work, I don't know what would happen. I actually don't think my brain is wired that way anymore, because this feels like I don't struggle to not do it, right? My brain is just not there anymore.
But it isn't enough to just be aware that you might have imposter syndrome. You have to actively work through this process.
I'm actively doing those things right now. What I don't know is if regular people just do those things anyway, right? So the things that I do, when I get several things that she says on her list, I'm clear about my schedule, right? My version of imposter syndrome required me to be everything to everybody. Okay, so I'm not sure if my assistant sent it to you, 20 Ways to Say No. It's been on my desk for 10 years. We'd love to have that. Okay, and some gracious ways to say no, right? Really beautiful ways to say no, right? So I've learned how to do only those things that are great things for me now, at this very moment, right? Because overscheduling just was feeding it. It was teaching me that was required for me to be okay. Turns out people don't miss me when I'm not there, right? That's a part of high pride. I think if I'm not there, it's gonna fall apart. Guess what? It's not. It's not. And so there's some things that I do. I call my friends when things go wrong so they can help me calibrate, right? I don't go to the place where I think something is bad, but I know, let me just get some calibration done. Let me get some help with this. I call my friends when things go well, because I don't know how to celebrate. I've learned how to, but my guess is that you're not great celebrators of yourself. Of other people, you're great, okay, maybe, right? But of ourselves, you know, the thing goes well, and we celebrate for, I say, 10 seconds. On the 11th second, then we're thinking, oh my gosh, they think I can do it, right? Or 9 things go well, my graduate students. One thing goes wrong, and you define yourself by the one thing that went wrong for a long time. It takes you a long time to come out of that. 9 went well on a regular basis, right? So there are things that I do that I've learned how to do here that I think are just healthy behavior that probably keep my brain in the right place, but I don't know how that works. But it's been helpful to just continue those things.
So as an academic, we're supposed to do research, teaching, and service.
And walk on water.
And walk on water.
Yeah.
And do them all very, very well.
Yeah.
So how do you keep that
and keep
balance?
Your hair dry at the same time,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
What did you say earlier? Do all those things and look
pretty at the same time. Yeah. I know, right?
So how do you keep that balance when you really are being evaluated based on your performance in all of those areas?
That's
But to do all of those areas well takes more time than you necessarily can have as a human being.
Yeah. Yeah, so we do a lot of mentoring with our assistant professors for this reason, for multiple reasons, but for this reason. So the job is teaching research and service at universities like Duke and at Emory. It is. And as a matter of fact, I interview all of our tenure track assistant professors, or anybody who's tenured or tenure track that we're about to hire. I'm interviewing them. And my part in there is to say to them, this job at Duke is teaching research and service. We value teaching. If that's not what you want to do, you're not one of us, and you're going to not be, it's going to be a poor fit, right? So it's not really about me trying to convince you to take my job. It's about me helping you find your fit. And if this is it, great. If it's not, move along, right? Because nobody is going to be happy. So it is the breadth of that. And I also want them to appreciate we care about your service, because when you don't do service, you just made more service for her, right? Like, so that's really important. The mentoring for us is really about helping people make great choices of research, teaching, and service. So I say to young people now at this point, because everybody's younger than I am, to my young scholars, if you're teaching a course for the first time, don't teach 4 new courses, right? Teach that course, and then first of all, you don't know what you're doing the first time, so you do need to teach it again, right? And then do it again, right? There are smart ways to teach. If you're going to teach a graduate course, teach something that's in your research. So if you need to do a lot of literature work, I'm just talking as a chemist now. If you need to do a lot of literature work, have your students do it in the class and report back to you. You don't have to read all those papers. Let them read all those papers, right? There are smart ways to teach, right? There are smart ways to do your research. We always tell them never do one thing. One thing should always count for more than one thing, right? So if you're going to, it's a great idea for you to be on a review panel. I was on a review panel for an NSF Career Award before I had one. I wasn't just giving service. I was there to see how do you win this thing, right? So make things count for more than one thing. And at different times, you have to, and service, the service we tell our assistant professors to serve yourselves, right? And the department at the same time. Be on the graduate recruitment committee so you can have first dibs on all those wonderful graduate students, right? Be on the seminar committee so that you can invite people in to see your work you're going to want to be people writing letters for you, right? There's a way to make things work. What we also tell them is that there is only 100%. Now most of you in this room are really good at math, but poor at this math. Okay, I'll talk about me. I was poor at this math. There's only 100% of you. Whenever my students come in, my assistant professors, I did that 120%. I said, come here, let me just tell you something. Okay, first of all, we have a meeting. This is a detour, sorry. We have a meeting at Duke among the leadership team that's called the Den of 10. There's 36 people in the room, okay? Drives me nuts, right? Like, can we just rename the thing? It's not 10, right? But I say that to say, because people say, I gave 120%. No, you did not. Of what? How did you get 8 days in the week? Like, how did you do that? There's 100%. When people say that to me, what they're telling me is that 20% of something else in your life just did not happen. You didn't spend time with your family. You didn't exercise. There's no such thing as 120% of a human being. There's 100%. So there's no such thing as 100% of research, 100% of service, and 100% of teaching at the same time. That's 300. There's 36 people in the room, right? Like it's a den of 10. Like, I don't get it. So what we try to tell them is at different points in your career, there are different types and amounts of service that are required of you, right? But in order for that to work, everybody's got to play the game, right? Everybody's got to, or most people have to play that. So we try to help them understand that. I encourage them to exercise. I say to them, you're going to be on this tenure track for 6 years. You're going to look up, and your 1-year-old is going to be 7. And if that doesn't gut check you, I don't know what will. Your 1-year-old is going to be 7 if you don't go home. And by the way, when you go home and you actually do this, it doesn't take as much time to do the same amount of work, right? That's a skill, to learn how to do something once and be done with it, right? Perfectionists do that same thing 4 times, right? While the thing that actually just needed a little bit of your time never got done, right? So it's a resetting. It's not lowering the standard. It's not blah, 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 the rigor of you're going to be an extraordinary scholar, and find mentors who've been extraordinary scholars who have a balanced life. It's possible to do it. It's not sustainable the other way. And even if it were sustainable where you would try to flip the switch in the 7th year or post-tenure, what did you just lose? It's not worth it. In my mind, it's not worth it. I have no children, but I have a life. I have friends, I got family. This job is crazy that I do. I thought, by the way, for those of you who are young professors or even just professors, maybe younger professors, I thought I was at 100% when I was a professor. Turns out I could do that job now in about half as much time. It is amazing the skill set that you get, as you figure this thing out, right? I'm like, oh, Lord have mercy. I didn't realize how much time I actually had. Perfectionism takes up a lot of time, right? So my version of this is I start with my calendar, because this is calendar controlled for me, and I put me on there first. And I do it now. So I am on my calendar, and in this job, I have to plan my calendar for the entire year. So I'm on my calendar first. There are things that I do, by the way, on a weekly basis, not at the end of the semester. Too late. Don't wait till the end of the semester to go to the gym. Right? Too late. Don't wait till the end of the semester just to stop working for a second. I know everybody around you is giving you positive feedback for working like a beast. Stop it. If you could stop doing it to each other, it would be great. But even if they don't, just take care of you, right? I do the same thing every week of self-care. And then my assistant has to build everything around that. Okay, so for example, she knew I was flying here last night. Okay, I'm an introvert. I know that's hard for you to imagine, but I am, okay? I'm an introvert. I recover by myself.
I understand.
She asked me, do you want to have dinner? She didn't ask me. She said, I know you don't want to have dinner. You didn't say that, right? Right. Yeah. You don't want to have dinner with it. No, I do not. I can't do it, right? I can't do it. I worked all day yesterday. I can't look at any other people. I have to recover, right? But there are things I do consistently for me, and then everything else has to fit around it. Because if I try to do it the other way, where I put work in and then fit me around it, it just won't happen. Yeah.
So do you have any advice for the audience on how to begin this journey and what the first steps are?
I always start with my people who help me. Breaking that silence with some helpful people. If you don't have people, get you some people. Get you some people. I don't know how to work on my brain with the way my brain works. Not starting. Today, my brain will kick in, and even then, I still have my people, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like I should put them on payroll. They are so amazing. But if you don't have honest relationships with some people, maybe academic and non, I would start there. That phone is ringing is mine, and that's my mother who's probably asking me, did I get the award yet? No, that's not her question. Her question is, did you tell them about me? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, ma'am. That's the answer. You need to know. Yes, ma'am is the answer. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I start there. I loved those 10 ways because they're just practical things that you can do. Somebody's been watching you do this who thinks that it doesn't compute, right? Somebody has been. And if nobody has, then reach out and get you some people. Trustworthy, non-cheerleader people, and I'd start there.